Hello, this is Max. Today, you will witness how a young family becomes trapped in a spatial confinement. Warning, there will be spoilers. Cuckoos engage in brood parasitism, laying their eggs in the nests of other birds. The movie showcases this parasitic life cycle, where a cuckoo chick displaces the other offspring once hatched, and the surrogate mother cares for it. Over time, the cuckoo grows into a large bird, consuming all the resources provided by the surrogate mother bird. Similar parasites exist in the human world as well. Gemma, a young kindergarten teacher, encounters one of her students observing two dead baby birds under a tree in the school garden. She tries to console the girl by explaining that it is a natural occurrence. Her boyfriend Tom, who works as a gardener at the school, joins in comforting the girl and buries the chicks to bring her some happiness. Gemma and Tom have modest incomes and few possessions, except for a car. They aspire to secure their future and decide to purchase a house together. After their workday, they visit a real estate agent to gather information about available houses. They meet Martin, an unusual salesperson, who introduces them to a residential development called Yonder. Although the couple isn't initially interested, Martin insists on showing them a sample house. They accompany him to the subdivision, where all the houses are identical, silent, and eerie. Martin guides them through home number 9, which is fully furnished and stocked with food and beverages. Strangely, Martin vanishes from the house without explanation. Annoyed by his unprofessional behavior and suspicious of the unsettling environment, Gemma and Tom try to leave Yonder but find themselves perpetually returning to house number 9. They encounter an endless array of identical homes, and their attempts to escape prove futile. Eventually, their car runs out of gas, and they lose cell phone reception. Left with no alternative, they reluctantly decide to spend the night in house number 9. Inside, they discover that the food in the refrigerator lacks any taste. The following morning, the couple makes the decision to escape from the bizarre place. Tom discovers a ladder inside the house and climbs onto the roof, hoping to find a way out of Yonder. However, he is horrified to realize that the rows of identical houses stretch endlessly in every direction. Desperate to escape, Gemma and Tom opt to follow the artificial-looking sun, believing it will lead them to freedom. They walk tirelessly for nearly a day until they spot a house with lights on, sparking their excitement. They break into the house, only to be met with disappointment as they find themselves back at house #9. To add to the strangeness, they discover a delivery box outside the house containing prepackaged food and essentials for survival. Frustrated, Tom sets fire to house #9 in an attempt to attract attention for help. Exhausted, the couple falls asleep on the road that night. However, when they wake up the next day, they are shocked to find the house perfectly intact, accompanied by a small newborn baby in a box with instructions that read, "Raise the child and be released." The couple is bewildered by this unexpected turn of events but have no choice but to raise the baby on their own. After 98 days, the baby grows to the size of a 7-year-old boy with an uncanny ability to mimic Tom and Gemma's voices in a strange manner. Although the boy calls them mother and father, the couple despises him due to his creepy high-pitched screams when he is unsatisfied or unhappy. The boy spends his time absorbed in peculiar patterns on the television, while closely observing and mimicking the couple's behavior. Living with the strange child and his unsettling actions takes a toll on the couple's mental and physical well-being. Tom repeatedly leaves messages for help on the roof, but their pleas go unanswered. They continue to receive daily supplies from the mysterious box that appears in front of the house, only to vanish once empty. One day, Tom questions the boy about the box, but the boy remains silent. Feeling bored and dissatisfied with his life, Tom spends his days sitting in the garden, eagerly anticipating someone to arrive and either collect or drop off the mysterious box. However, no one ever shows up. The boxes simply appear and vanish in an unsettling manner. One day, while flicking a lit cigarette onto the lawn, Tom notices that the soil in Yonder seems to be made of an artificial material. Intrigued, he starts digging the hole and quickly becomes engrossed in the process. Digging gives him a sense of purpose as he dreams of creating a tunnel to escape. Tom's life undergoes a transformation. Each day, he rushes through his meals and dedicates himself to digging the hole in the garden until nightfall. This obsession causes him to distance himself from Gemma, speaking to her less frequently and growing emotionally distant. At times, he even falls asleep at the bottom of the hole. On an ordinary day, a weary Gemma sits on the living room floor, watching the boy play. Eventually, the boy turns on the television, which displays creepy and bizarre patterns that captivate him. After a day of non-stop digging, Tom joins Gemma in the car at night. He expresses that the car is the only thing in Yonder that feels real to him. As they chat, Tom accidentally hits the radio and, to their surprise, it still functions. Having been isolated from the outside world for so long, the couple rejoices upon hearing soulful music and can't resist dancing to it. Even the eerie boy joins in the dance. However, Tom suddenly becomes enraged and violently throws the boy to the ground. Alarmed, Gemma rushes to check on him, relieved to find him unharmed. In the following scene, Gemma tucks the boy into bed. She explains why she and Tom cannot be with him all the time. As she is about to leave the boy to sleep, he unexpectedly refers to her as mother. Gemma corrects him, asserting that she is not his mother. This angers the disturbed boy, and he screams at the top of his lungs. Gemma attempts to quiet him, but when he refuses to comply, she simply slams the door and goes to bed. A despondent Gemma then tries to initiate intimacy with Tom, but he declines and apologizes for not being in the mood. The next day, the boy barges into the room, waking the couple with a piercing scream. They all proceed to have breakfast together. After the meal, Tom resumes his digging, only to hear an unsettling sound from beneath the ground. Later that night, he awakens to the same peculiar noise. He rushes to the living room, where he discovers the boy watching the television, from which the sound emanates. Tom switches off the television, but the boy promptly turns it back on. Jim attempts to discipline him, but he adamantly refuses to comply. In the end, they decide to leave the room and let the boy be. The following morning, the boy once again demands breakfast with a scream. This time, Tom loses his temper, lifts the boy, and locks him inside the car. His intention is to starve the boy, hoping that this will unveil the person behind the sinister game. Gemma tries to intervene, but Tom restrains her and takes her inside the house. He declares that he will no longer allow her to help the boy. However, when Gemma hears the boy scream and struggle inside the car, she snatches the keys from Tom and rescues him, further straining their relationship. As the days go by, Gemma continues to care for the boy as it provides her with some solace. She realizes that he is incapable of imagination or visualization. Tom's emotional distance from Gemma brings her closer to the boy. They engage in daily games and even have picnics together on the grass. One day, the boy goes missing, and Gemma searches for him relentlessly. Finally, he returns at night carrying a strange textbook written in a terrifying and unfamiliar language. Gemma questions the boy about the source of the book, but he remains silent. She implores him to at least mimic the person who gave it to him, and this time, the boy complies. He demonstrates by expanding his neck sacs like a toad while emitting bizarre sounds. Overwhelmed with horror and despair, Gemma breaks down in tears, unable to tolerate the creepy boy any longer. She pleads to go home, but the boy smiles and cryptically replies that she is already home. In the subsequent scene, another 98 days have elapsed. The eerie boy has now grown into an adult, sending chills down Gemma's spine. She confides in Tom, contemplating that they should have killed the boy. By this point, both Gemma and Tom have grown weaker, with visible bruises on Tom's back. Aware that their time is running out, Gemma decides to take matters into her own hands. One day, she follows the freakish individual when he leaves the house, hoping to discover an escape route. Unfortunately, she loses sight of him and becomes lost herself. Meanwhile, While excavating the hole, Tom stumbles upon a decaying corpse inside a body bag. Frightened, he quickly climbs out of the hole. In the midst of this, he hears Gemma's cries for help. They call out to each other and eventually reunite, but they find themselves unable to enter the house. The freak has locked them out. Exhausted, Gemma drags Tom into the car, and they spend the night there. With days passing by without sustenance, Tom becomes incredibly frail, teetering on the edge of death. When the freak emerges from the house during the day, Gemma pleads with him to save Tom. However, he callously replies that it's time for Tom to be released. Helpless, Gemma cradles her husband in her arms, and they remain on the sidewalk, reminiscing about their first meeting. Tragically, Tom passes away in her embrace. Later, the freak returns with a box containing a vacuum bag. He places Tom's lifeless body inside and tosses it into the same pit that Tom had dug. The following morning, a furious Jim attempts to kill the freak with Tom's pickaxe but only manages to inflict a minor injury. The freak emits strange noises and mysteriously manipulates the streets with his hands before retreating into the underground maze. Refusing to give up, Gemma follows the freak into the maze, which presents a terrifying, colorful, haunted house-like environment. She is taken aback to find identical homes where other couples live similar lives with the same eerie boy. Gemma realizes that everything she witnesses mirrors her experiences in Yonder, and she observes that all the couples eventually meet their demise. Overwhelmed by despair, Gemma is suddenly drawn back into house number 9. There, she comprehends that they have been trapped in this community since their arrival. Collapsing onto the floor, Gemma closes her eyes, expecting death. The last thing she hears is the freak sealing her inside a vacuum bag, declaring that a mother's purpose is to raise a child and then perish. After Gemma's passing, the freak tosses her into the same pit where Tom rests and buries the hole. He proceeds to restore the house to its original state, refuels the car, and leaves the community, returning to the same real estate agent they had encountered before. The man who had recommended Tom and Gemma remains at the agent's office but has aged and reached the end of his cycle. The freak takes the man's name tag and assumes his position. Before commencing his new role, the new Martin rolls up his predecessor's body and places it in a file cabinet. The movie concludes as Martin warmly welcomes a new couple searching for their dream home. Thank you for watching. You can subscribe and give this video a like. Goodbye.